So I just wanted to start out. So me and Mike Pace have put this together, and Mike, feel free to jump in on any of this specifically. But one thing that we knew that Matt and Cody are going to be focusing on the research those warm season cover crop mixes, and so we didn't really include this in our video at all. Instead, we kind of chose, we actually added some demonstration plots up in Lewiston where we have those research plots as well. And that's kind of what our video is going to be covering today. I just wanted to echo what Cody said. We're seeing a lot of the same things Cody is up on those Lewiston plots. We're seeing it's really hard to get the irrigation all the way across, especially to the edges of our treatments. And we are, however, seeing a little bit more, like he mentioned, of the turnip, the brassicas underneath of those cover crop mixes. And that is probably because we planted earlier. However, we really kind of took a risk with that because even after we planted, we had about 2 days where we were really close to freezing. So that was an issue that we ran into up there. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, sounds good. Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll get started with the video and we'll go from there. So.
Hi, my name is Mike Pace. I'm with USU Extension here in Box Elder County, and with me today is Jake Hadfield from Cache County. We're with USU Extension, and today we're out at the Lewiston Research Farm here in Cache Valley, Utah.
Yeah, we're going to be discussing some of these different cover crops. These cover crops have actually, just for a point of reference, have been planted. They were planted about 70 days ago, around May 14th. And they've just received regular irrigation. So we kind of wanted to go through, give you a tour of what these cover crops look like, just so you can get an idea of what we're looking at with different species.
So, talking a little bit about cover crops, why we're using cover crops, why we're looking at cover crops, and that here in Utah, the Natural Resource Conservation Service and USU Extension have been looking at, there's been growers that are interested in putting these cover crops and taking better soil health and that of their soils. And so what we're trying to do is look at those types of plants that we can put in the fields, in the ground, that are going to help benefit from that, and just do that research so we've got that. Okay?
Yeah, we're really looking to see if these cover crops can help improve our soil health. And some of the things that we're really looking for is to see if we can't somehow put these cover crops into different crop rotations in order to be able to include that extra soil health while still making sure we have production practices going in different agricultural lands.
Yeah, so for example, this field right here that we've got, it was, there was no pre-crop in the ground, and that here it was basically tilled in the springtime of the year when we put it in. I think a lot of interest is, once we pull that grain crop off or the corn crop off, what can we put in afterwards to kind of stabilize that soil and keep it so that we got, moisture and that organic matter back in the soils. And we're just trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Exactly.
What we've got here, we're going to show you, these are just single species, and then we're going to look at later on in the video, we're going to look at some mixes that we've got here. And so we're standing in front of the Daikon radish right here. You can see it's actually got quite a bit of growth on it. There's seed pods, there's flowers in that here in it. We just kind of pulled one of them right now, so that's about 1.5 inches in diameter and about 3 to 4 inches long. The idea of this plant is this is going to be one of those, kind of has a leafy top, but the work of this one is it's going to grow deep. It's going to loosen up those compacted soils in that for us and kind of loosen that up.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, one of the first plants we're going to be talking about is mustard specifically. Now, one of the great properties that we have with mustard is it has great fumigative properties, and so it can help with insects and different things like that. Overall, what we saw with the mustard is it grew very quickly. It was one of the first plants to bolt and bloom. And we also see, if you zoom in, you can see the seed pods themselves. We have a lot of seed pods that are produced. This also can be used as a crop, can be harvested for mustard, but can also be tilled under and be a good green manure to use just for your soil health in general.
Okay, so our next crop we want to talk about is purple turnip, and so you can kind of see this one right here. Again, this is about 70 days worth of growth onto this. There's a lot of material that has been stored up into this root. A lot of times that's what we're looking for, is a crop like that that's going to take up the nutrients stored in the root and then going to break that down as it decomposes, and that if you leave it in the field or if you turn it and work it up. A lot of times growers, you know, if you got livestock in that you're going to be feeding in late fall, you know, the turnips in that are a cool season crop, and so they're going to stay around. And actually you'll see cattle will be out there foraging in the field, and that they'll actually pull these up and consume the turnip as well, and that so it can be a good source of livestock feed with this. And you know, great thing to add into the cover crops there.
The next crop we have is a millet. We actually have a couple different millets out here, but specifically what we're going to be talking about, this is German millet. And you can tell, I mean, you can see it's kind of like your cereal grain, kind of like your grass. It's got a thin stalk. It actually makes, that thin stalk makes it great in a cover crop mixture, just because it can be able to be used with multiple other crops. Your millet can also be harvested, but overall, I mean, this can really just help thicken up your cover crop to help you get the most out of planting either a mixture or just planting millet by itself to be put back into the soil.
This is actually a forage oat, especially bred for forage production, not so much oat production. One of the things with the forage oat, you can kind of see here, if you look further out into the plot, you can see that it started to lodge, and so it's gotten quite high, not as weak here, and so it's fallen over, and that's what we call lodging in this particular one. But most of us are familiar with it. Very good product, you know, crop to have in a cover crop in that with us.
About is hairy vetch. Now, one thing to remember about hairy vetch is it's a legume, so what it's going to be doing is providing nitrogen down into the soil. It's going to be fixing nitrogen as well as increasing the soil microbe activity, which is really good for cover crops. That's what we want to see. Now, if you look down at the plant specifically, you'll see how thick it is here, how thick it's grown in. You can really see it's going to add a lot of green to it. You know, you can use this as a green manure. But one of the things to remember is that if you put this in a mix, one of the nice things is while crops are growing over the top of it, this is actually going to be growing underneath. And if you can get a good thick stand underneath like this while those other plants are growing up, you really can get a really good yield and just have an overall good cover crop mix.
We're in some Triticale. Again, something very typical. We see a lot of Triticale will be in some of our three-way mixes where we've got Triticale, wheat, oats in that in there, or another small grain crop. Very useful. You can see gets a lot of growth in that to it under the right conditions, and just can't say enough good about Triticale. The main thing with it is if you're going to be grazing it or using something like that, you probably want to either use a beerless or an awnless Triticale. Because otherwise you can get some of these awns that will dry down, and as livestock forage and that on it can cause abscess and things like that in their mouths and that. So just some concerns with Triticale, but again, a very good grass type crop to put in your cover crop.
All right, perfect. So this cover crop that we have here, obviously it's peas here. We've actually got two varieties. We've got a winter pea as well as our Vika pea. And so peas are really good. Again, they're a legume. They're going to provide some activity to the microbial status in the soil. Overall, what we're going to see is they're going to fix nitrogen in the soil to be able to help improve the overall nitrogen in the system. One thing that we do see with pea, however, is you can kind of see it here. The pea is falling over a little bit. If the peas themselves don't have something to climb on, a lot of times that's what you're really going to see. If it could, you know, have a Triticale or something, it could climb up on that. So a lot of times peas do really well when they're in a mixed system with other species.
So this is one of our first mixes that we have. We've got about 4 different plants in this mix. We've got some grass in our Sudan grass. We've got the hairy vetch. We have buckwheat, and we have radish in that in here. Most of the mixes that you're going to get are going to have 4 to 8, maybe 10 at the most of different combination of plants in there. You can see in this plot, we've got quite a bit of biomass in that here with the grasses. We've got, you know, the radish in here that's going to take and, you know, store up some of those energy in that into the roots that are going to break down and decompose over time when we terminate this area. But really a nice looking mix of some of those different plants that we showed you earlier on in our single species working together for us as a cover crop.
Right, this is another one of our cover crop warm season mixes. So this one actually has 11 different species of cover crops. We got 3 different species of grasses, 3 different species of legumes, a couple species of root crops, as well as just a couple broadleaf species like canola. Now overall what we see is this really just has a lot of plant diversity. That's something that we're really looking for with cover crops. I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but bees are loving this. You can see all the different flowers. There's a lot of bees involved with this, and you can just see how much yield that we've got just with all these different species involved in this mix overall.
Okay, so this is another one of our warm season grass mixes, or excuse me, cover crop mixes here. This is a 6-way, and so we've got two different things of grasses, the Sudan grass and the Triticale. They can make up about 50% of this mix right here. In the legumes, where we've got the hairy vetch and the winter pea in here, they're about 40%, and then the rest of it are the radishes and mustard and that you can see in here. And so again, a really nice mix in that complements what we're trying to do here with cover crops.
Okay, all right, so this is actually one of our cool season cover crop mix. This is an 8-way mix, and as you can see, about 50% of this is going to be involved with grasses, another about 50% is going to be legumes, and we have a small amount here that are actually going to be broadleafs and different things like that. You can kind of see how the cool season's a little bit different with the selection you're going to have. You're going to have more of a kind of a forage oat, Triticale, different things like that overall, but still same principle. We're trying to get multiple species involved so that we can be able to just have that different plant diversity for the cover crop mix. Okay, so what you're looking at here, this is actually a plant called Facilia. It kind of looks like a thistle, and in our cool season mix, you probably saw it thinking it was thistle, but this is actually one of the broadleaf plants that's included in the mix. Supposed to be pretty good at, you know, just providing overall yield as well as just a good green manure crop.
So this is our last of our cool season mixes. This is a 9-way mix. We've got oats, we got proso millet in here as kind of our grasses. They're going to be about 35% of this mix. And then we have our radishes, our winter peas, our turnips. And you also see in this mix, we've had them throw in some sunflower. This is not the typical sunflower that you're going to see along the roadside, but is actually a black seed sunflower. There's also a little bit of grazing corn that's out in here with the winter pea and that, but again, just kind of a nice cool season mix. We've got good growth in that out of it here, and should do well as a cover crop for us.
All right, that was just some examples here. I actually wanted to show one picture real quick that we have as well, if I can bring it up here. So those last cover crops we just talked about, this is actually an aerial picture from a drone. I just think this kind of shows how thick it is through the stand and everything. So let's see if I can share it here. You guys probably can see that now, but that's just an aerial view of those last few mixes that we were talking about, those demonstration mixes. And you can just really see how thick throughout these cover crops we're able to get. I mean, these were planted on May 14th. That's something to remember. And they have received irrigation regularly. So really they've had ideal conditions overall, but you can definitely see how thick those cover crops are through there, and just see what kind of impact they could have potentially, especially for soil health. But with that, that's everything that we have. So we can move on to the next one, I guess. If there's any questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A.